Hello there. What is going on, everybody? I am talking to you today about the size of future waves for X-Wing 2nd Edition. If you have been playing X-Wing for a long time, early into its 1.0 days, you'll remember that like a wave would come out, and a wave was always multiple expansions. Typically, in the early days of X-Wing, a wave was 4 ships. It would usually be 2 for each faction. As time went on, waves kind of stayed around 4 ships, but then when they introduced scum and villainy, waves got changed up a little bit. It wasn't strictly, exactly 1 or 2 per faction anymore. You kind of had a wave 6 in X-Wing 0.0 where there was a lot more scum and villainy, and that's it. Then there were some things that other factions could use, but it was pretty much scum. And then from there on out, it was a lot of times it was still 4 ships, but it would maybe 2 for scum and then 1 for the other 2 factions to try to help get scum caught up. But still kind of held true to around the 4-ship wave. There were supplemental releases that didn't always fit into a wave, like epic ships or an Aces pack, and those would kind of come on their own. Or even like extra little, you can still, technically there's still expansions, but the extra little accessory packs, like the extra bases, the colored bases, the maneuver dial upgrade kits, things like that, would occasionally come out as well. But your waves were always, more or less centered around 4 ships. As the game kind of got itself flushed out, we started to see like the 3-ship wave emerge, and then we even had wave 14, which was technically, it was 2 expansions, but I guess technically there was 3 ships in wave 14, which was like the final 1.0 wave. But still, you were seeing around 4 ships is what we kind of expected as a wave. And this was even when Armada was releasing waves for a while, with a little bit of consistency. This was more or less, close to the same blueprint, although it wasn't exactly. Like, it might be 4 ships and then 2 squadron packs. That was like our second wave. And we had 3 and 4, which launched on the same day, which were 2 ships each. But so that was kind of like 3-4 free Thor, wave Thor, I think a lot of people called it, and that was still kind of like 4 ships. And so 4 ships has always been a wave, but now it looks like with 2.0 that number is fundamentally changed, and there's still not a full norm established of what you're going to have to expect to spend to keep up with X-Wing. So it's like probably never been a better time to just pick one faction and stick with it than right now. But for our launch wave, the launch wave for 2.0 was very, very huge. It was something like 14 products altogether. You had 3 factions to start launching with, in addition to your core set. You had 3 conversion kits, and then you had multiple expansions per faction. You had 2 per faction, and then plus 1 more for scum because you had Lando's Falcon. Plus you had the maneuver dial upgrade kits. It was a lot. I think it was something like $400 worth of stuff I run at Gen Con at MSRP, and that was without the maneuver dial upgrade kits because I did not get those, but got everything else. So it was expensive to get started if you want everything generally. But the good news is you really don't have to play everything. There are a few corner cases where it's advantageous to mix factions, like with Maul, for example, who is in Scum, and using him with with the Rebels. And then if you want to equip Darkside Force upgrades, in theory you might have to get some Darkside expansions. However, that for the most part you pretty much don't have to buy across faction if you don't want to. But the launch wave was a tremendous amount. Now wave 2, which as of right now still isn't out yet, is the Resistance and Resistance and First Order. We're still getting a lot of expansions here. We're getting 4 for the Resistance and then 3 more for the First Order. And what is that sound? So 7 is still a lot more than we're used to, and this is actually like one of the smaller waves that we're seeing, and it's still going to be kind of expensive. Now these conversion kits are going to be a little cheaper. There's not quite as much to do. You don't have to get the dial upgrade kits, although they are pretty cool looking. It's nice to see those expansions get their own. If you are, I'm not a dial upgrade person because having such a large collection, I don't want to have to like swap things out. And I remember there was a time like where in 1.0 I had 7 TIE Advanced. Now I'm not going to run 7 TIE Advanced in 2.0 because it would require a lot more conversion kits, but actually, I guess technically I have 8 now since I bought that the 1.0 TIE Advanced. But I don't want to have to, like, I want to just be able to pull out my dials and go. I don't want to have to change out cardboard and stuff with the dial upgrade kits. So those aren't for me. But if you do, So you can basically get Wave 2 a lot cheaper, especially in some of these cases you don't need to buy everything. And I think that's one thing that is going to kind of skew these numbers, because you're going to be looking at like this huge wave, and Wave 3 is really big too. But there's a lot of things you don't have to get. So while the potential price point is extremely high, it's arguably much lower depending on your point of view. So for example, if you're only playing First Order, and you have your 1.0 stuff, just one conversion kit gets you all you need. Then you're done. I mean, you still have to have a core set, but yeah, then you're done. And so that's, so that could be a whole, very cheap for you to get into the game. You might want 2 conversion kits depending on how many First Order ties you've got. And if you really want the newly painted red glass cockpit, then maybe you buy a tile, and I don't think you need to. Wave 3 is where it gets tricky, because we've got a lot of stuff coming in Wave 3. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 expansions plus 2 more, so it's 10 total if you want to consider the dial upgrade kits, which are definitely optional. And if you're on a budget, I think you don't really need to worry about those right now. That's something that can be like a stocking stuffer or later on in life. And by the way, I should probably do a gift guide. That would probably be a good idea. Maybe recommend your loved ones to come check out videos and get ideas. So actually, let me know in the description below some things that you guys would love to have, and I'll keep that in mind as I work on a holiday gift guide for maybe an early December or late November release. All right, so basically in Wave 3, it looks like a whole lot. It looks like it's 10 expansions and everything. But if you're sticking with a faction, you're not going to have to buy a cross aisle. But for 2, they're getting to this point where they're re-releasing expansions that were already in 1.0, and they've said in the case of the expansions that were already like the Z95 and then your tie here, you don't need to buy them. There's nothing in here that wasn't in the conversion kit. It's just if you want more, and they're going to release every single thing that was in 1.0 in 2.0, or so they've said. They may eventually, pull out. They're going to be pulling out probably certain pilots and things like that. They're maybe not every pilot will come over, but all those ships and expansions are going to come over. They're going to be in 2.0, so that's going to just make future waves that much bigger. And you've got 14 waves of stuff to catch up on, so it probably won't be spread out over 14 waves of X-Wing 2.0, but maybe it will at the rate that they're going. It looks like you're only going to get like 1 or 2. We didn't even get any Rebel ships in this wave. So, and of course no First Order or Resistance. Of course, is not enough for them. But it's going to take a long time for them to, get caught up while introducing new stuff at the same time and supporting 7 factions. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be in future waves. My prediction is that future waves are going to be huge, and they'll continue to be huge. Wave 3 might be bigger than the norm. I think the norm is going to be somewhat closer to around Wave 2's size. So what does the future hold for more expansions? Well, first off, there's going to be new stuff for the big Power 3, as I call them, the Rebels, the Empire, and Scum. Scum is just an absolute wealth. Probably will be the biggest faction in the game by a long shot once the game gets continued development, just because the Scum and Villainy faction is universal amongst all timelines. And it just covers anything that doesn't fit into any of the other branches. It seems reasonable that we'll probably get Dr. Aphra at some point also, so that one I would expect sooner rather than later, because we've already got BT and 000 in the conversion kit. So like her story and characters from her comic book are already in the game, so it seems like she's coming. But any new comic, also Scum and Villainy from the Clone Wars, may end up in the Scum and Villainy faction. Hondo Anaka, for example, very likely to show up. So we're going to see a lot more Scum and Villainy stuff. We're going to see more Clone Wars stuff. We're going to see more as Star Wars Resistance comes out. We're going to see more Star Wars Resistance-based stuff. We're going to see First Order, and we're going to see the Resistance as well, plus Episode 9 just being around the corner. All these new shows. So there's so much there. And for them to spread out among 7 factions, we may see a point where a wave comes out and every faction gets a new ship. That is very likely. However, even though, and of course that's not necessarily, I think Wave 3 proves that that's not the exact formula. It does not have to be that way. But we're in for larger waves. We're not going to see 4-ship waves. I don't think we're going to see 4-ship waves in a 7-faction game. I think, I think what we're going to see is a little more balance, possibly multiple ships for a same faction if there's a good reason for it. For example, if they were to re-release the Houndstooth with a with a Z95 specifically painted, a Z95 repaint to go with the Houndstooth title and to be the Nashta pup, and actually come with the physical model, I could see that being like technically a 2-ship expansion for Scum, and although it might be in the same box, so it might only be 1 expansion, but your waves are just going to naturally get bigger when you've got more than double the factions you had before. And to keep the game fresh, especially with all the focus being on the Clone Wars coming up soon, so like later this year, or rather I'd say within like the next 6 months, there's going to be a lot more focus on the Clone Wars. Then after episode 9 at the end of 2019, so early 2020, there's going to be a lot of focus on the Resistance and First Order, because if fan theories or in probabilities or any indication, we're probably going to see a ton more First Order and Resistance stuff, and Scum is going to be bloating out and filling out the entire time. Plus, since we've already got 7 factions, and the way some of the shows are going, we may even see more factions, so it's always entirely possible. But it looks like waves are probably going to have around 6 minimum, I would say 6 ships or 6 expansions minimum. Some of those expansions you won't need to buy. For example, if they re-release the Reaper, you're not going to need to buy that. If they re-release, the TIE Interceptor, you may not need to buy that. You've already got, if you've been playing X-Wing 1.0, you probably already have 3 completely different paint schemes of TIE Interceptor. Unless they put new stuff in there, but they had kind of said that they were going to also, if they added new pilots to existing ships, they would add a cardboard pack so you wouldn't have to rebuy existing ships. We'll see if that ends up holding true for the duration of X-Wing 2.0, because as times go by, things will change. But it does look like future expansions are going to be much larger if the first 3 waves are any indication. Plus, the price point has just overall gone up a few bucks. So, this is becoming a more expensive game. Better time than ever to just pick a faction and try to stick with it, because especially if it's one of the original 3, you're going to have a lot of ships to choose from. If it's one of the newer ones, and you're on a budget, you'll probably have to not spend as much money, but you might kind of get stale. They're trying to make up for that, though, by giving a lot of unique pilots, especially for First Order and Resistance. I think there's something like 9 unique T-70 X-Wing pilots and 9 unique TIE FO pilots. So for starters, that's pretty good for a limited faction. Let's hope they keep keep going with that kind of depth for those smaller factions to help them not become too stale. And then so basically I'm gonna say 6 ship minimum is my guess for future waves. We'll see if that holds true or not. But if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. That will also make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment to enter the latest giveaway, which is for a Superstar Destroyer. And in the form of a Cool Stuff gift card. You can use that for whatever you want, like maybe Wave 3, or Wave 4, or Wave 5, or Wave 6, or maybe a couple of those. But anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon as well. You guys are awesome. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.